Hello everyone. Um, we have a session today that will be talking about climate water resilience. My name is Stella Mutungo. I am a technical advisor in a program under the Ministry of Land, Housing and Urban Development that is known as Building Climate Resilient for Urban Poor, or rather BCRAP. So building climate resilient for urban poor is basically what the name suggests. Like we are trying to build climate resilience and help adaptation in the informal settlements in the urban sector. I am with my fellow speaker here. I'll give him some time to introduce himself. So go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marcos. Thanks for the introduction. And well, I am a researcher at the University of Exeter in the UK at the Nature and Climate Impact team. But I must start saying that I'm Brazilian, so I am strongly connected with the water resilience. Oh, yeah? Please come with us. Yeah,
We are
no
just
problem.
starting, so you didn't mean a lot.
We are just introducing ourselves. So I'm strongly connected with the water resilience talk, especially because last year you may heard about the extreme floods in Rio Grande do Sul state in Brazil. This is the state where I was born, and I was living there by the time that we got that extreme event. And since then, I decided this was a real turning because my background is computer science, AI, and I was working with agrometeorology systems, working with agriculture, land management, water resource management in some way. And at that moment was when I decided to focus on water management and nature and climate research because we can feel what's happening with climate. So yeah, happy to be here to share some of our work at the Nature and Climate Impact team and learn even more with my colleagues here.
Very, very welcome, Marco. We were just introducing ourselves, so you can go ahead and introduce yourself
All right.
and what you do.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. My name is Omar Saleh from the Netherlands. We are a technology provider focused on the water control solutions. In particular, we focus on anticipatory measures like a mobile flood barrier, which is our flagship product. That's actually how we started. We started off with a small company, mobile flood barrier, but gradually we saw that more and more we saw that companies or clients or communities, they need a whole range of solutions when fighting water challenges. So actually we are expanding now. In particular, we are integrating IT with our anticipatory measures. So offering it as one whole package. The IT part is for us very important. I mean, maybe I can elaborate on that later on. But this whole concept of offering a holistic approach is something we are working on now worldwide, with a distinct focus on developing countries, Africa, Asia, actually to a lesser extent Europe, not yet in the Americas. Hopefully after the COP we can expand here as well. But you might know that, as from the Netherlands, we are focused on water management. More than half of our country is below sea level, so it's in our genes, we have to do that. And the IT part, AI now is coming in, is going to be more and more important. So that will be our direction for the future.
Thank you for sharing that, Omar. And the mobile flood structures that you have talked about, I think, is a genius idea. And this is like a decentralized method of flood control and water management. I would like to get from you, how do you think we move forward to the decentralized systems? Because what is existing now and what is conventional is centralized systems, including for wastewater treatment. So how do we move from centralized system to decentralized system? Because I think they are quick and they are efficient and also cheap form of solutions.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I had an event yesterday at with the African Development Bank, and I was explaining to them, for me it's always been baffling. So we have a very community-driven product, decentralized, as you said. The thing is, we know that communities, they need these solutions. So there is a need. We have the solution. There is funding in the market, but we don't know how to access that. So these three things are not coming together. I think that is a challenge if you want to scale up. I'm a firm believer that having concrete solutions in a decentralized level, that is very effective. I think that should be the focus. Really technological solutions. Ours is a very straightforward solution that can be deployed easily. We can train communities, even rural communities who don't have any technical backgrounds. So effective solutions, innovative, that doesn't really need a lot of educational background. I think that is the way forward. That is the decentralized part. You can integrate it with centralized. So, for example, in the case of Eastern Africa, you have IGAD or ICPAC. They have this control room, and there's more of a centralized institution where they can monitor risks. That is the centralized part. That actually should collaborate with the decentralized part. So, for example, you could say they are monitoring climate risks, they are monitoring flood risks, and at a certain point they see in the north of Uganda, they see a risk of flooding. Then a decentralized solutions come in action. And I think that it's a two-way street. So I think that centralized and decentralized, they should work together. That is the way I look at it.
Great, thank you, and very, very good insights in terms of that. Marcos, you have a background in IT, you have a background in computer science and innovations. I would want to understand, how do we integrate all those innovations for the purposes of optimizing water use, or rather ensuring that water is used efficiently, water is available where it's needed, and all that. How do you integrate all the innovations that are in?
Okay, thanks for this question. Yeah, these days we have many technologies around. So everyone wants to use AI for everything, and machine learning and IoT and sensors to get the data. And I think we have a bunch of solutions in the market that are exploring this in a good way. What I really think we need to fill the gap, as we were talking before the panel start, is to fill this gap between the solution and the application, the real application, and make this connection with the stakeholders. Let's say if you are working in a specific community, to get this link to understand the reality. I don't know if you had the time to listen or read something about Belen. This is my first time here, and I'm staying with a family of my friend, and they shared with me that Belen actually was they showed me a map from 200 years ago of Belen, and half of the city does not exist, especially coastal area. You know, the Vila do Peso market, these regions where they have some tourist attractions. This area does not exist. It was the river, and they fill it with land to use. So when I saw this, this reinforced my thinking that we need to come and understand the context to them to be able to apply the technology. So I'm Brazilian, but I'm living in the UK now, or working at the University of Exeter. We have many partners in Brazil, in Africa, in Europe, in different regions. But if we want to build something for Belém, we need to come here and to understand the reality. Otherwise, the solution we will develop in the UK will not fit with the needs here. So I do think we have the kind of maturity that we need in terms of technology. To integrate, it depends a lot of the purpose of each solution. And we need to co-create, you need to develop this process of co-creation with local communities, local government. And that's nice that today you are from government, I'm from academia, you are from private sector. So it's nice to have this kind of conversation. I think we need to also integrate these sectors before we think on the technology. Because the technology is the mean that we will build to some solution. So as long as we have a solid foundation in terms of understand the needs of the communities, what we need, what we want what is the problem that we want to solve, we can put the pieces together for technology. Sometimes AI is good, sometimes IoT sensor can be good. Sometimes we already have all the technology deployed and we will need data infrastructure. Maybe we need to get together this huge data set and make this open and available for different solutions. So I think this is this direction that we need to think in the solutions in terms of digital integration and innovation.
Okay, great, great. Those were quite really good insights. And I think what I gathered from it is the co-creation bit. And I totally agree with you. I think the challenge that has always been there is that the government has been working as a silo, the academia has been working as a silo, the private sector has been working as a silo, and this conversation now is the conversation that needs to be scaled further in terms of ensuring that we are, like what you said, we are co-creating. If there are some technological or other innovations that are existing. Some are not too complicated. For example, like aquifer recharge that can help in management of groundwater, or even the flood controls that you're using, Omar. So I feel like all this can be integrated for the purposes of proper implementation. We can start from the top, ensuring that the policies have integrated all these things. All right, from the government, ensuring that the government has buy-in. Because if the government does not have buy-in, then we cannot even implement them in the communities. We cannot even get financing for them if they are not embedded in the national plans or rather the regional plans. So I think that is very important, having policies in place. And also, it's also very important to ensure stakeholder collaboration. And stakeholder collaboration is where the academia does their research. They share their research to the policy making people, and the policy making people are able to come up with policies and decision making that are well informed. Because sometimes we make policies that are not well informed, and when that happens, it means we are not solving the community challenges, especially the community water challenges. And I think one of the government priorities should be water, because we know water is life. We always say water is life, and people might think that is a fallacy, but it's not a fallacy. So moving forward is we need to prioritize that and getting the civil society sector, the private sector, and all those sectors together and having them implement all these innovations. Okay. So maybe you can expound on that because we have dealt on the policies and all that. Maybe you can expound on that as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I think in our case, we actually apply that as well. Because we have quite our projects are replicable. We can pretty much do the same project everywhere. And to give you an idea of how we normally have our project team established, there's always people of the government in the steering committee. Academia, we try to involve them as well. Especially for the data part, data is important, and academia, we have them always represented in our projects. Of course, the private sector, that's ourselves. I want to add two groups in particular. One is the community members. So we always have a community member or community leader involved. We need them. We need to understand, in line with what you mentioned, what their needs are. I'm a technology provider from the Netherlands. People in Africa, the community, they know better what their issues are. So I need to listen to them. And one group in particular I want to highlight as well is women. I think women and youth are impacted the most by climate change. That's what we see. So we always have a women's representative in our project team. And having said that, it's not just checking your box, hey, we have a woman, but no, the woman also needs to have a decision-making power position. So that means in the steering committee, because some things that are not addressed well, in my view, is that women lack control. So they don't have control over land. So that's a big issue. I mean, we can implement the project, but how is it sustainable for women if they don't have any control over the land or no power in society? So I think that problem is also something we want to address in each project that we do. So collaboration is key at all different layers, but in our case, it has to be community driven. So the role of the community member, the role of the women's representative is essential if we want to have a successful project.
If I may add something, I totally agree with all these points that you highlighted, and I would like to add also another thing we are chatting before the panel, the concern about data integrity, because you spoke about climate justice, so who are being the most affected communities when we have climate events, and again mentioning the floods in Rio Grande do Sul 1.5 years ago. When something happens, some extreme event happens, the next 24 hours or 48 hours before the event are very delicate in terms of data integrity. We have many fake news being spread. We have many misinformation and disinformation being spread. So together with the collaborators to understand the stakeholders, providing climate justice, I think data integrity nowadays is part of climate justice. Access to real information is part of climate justice. And I'm very happy that this year, for the first time, we have data integrity on the official agenda of COP30. So last week, we had many moments where we could share improvements and solutions in terms of data integrity. This is also one of our focus of work at Exeter, how to apply AI to identify climate misinformation, for example. So once you can talk and listen the community, and also provide reliable data, reliable information about climate, reliable climate education. I think this could also help and improve the process for us to move forward on water resilience. Because many communities have their own knowledge about how they manage water, but they also suffer from fake news and misinformation spread about water. So yeah, I think we can also add this piece to the whole plan in terms of water resilience.
Okay, great insights. I think what I am getting from both of you is that firstly, we build with the community, not for the community. And that was very important when we were coming up with our program, Building Climate Resilient with the Urban Poor. At the beginning, it used to be Building Climate Resilient for Urban Poor. But we sat down and asked ourselves, are we building for them or are we building with them? Because if we are building for them, then it is highly likely not to be sustainable. We don't know what the challenges they're going through. We don't know and the interesting bit is that when you're talking about data and information, the communities also have their information. And in most cases, they have the right information because they are going through it. They are the ones that are facing all those climate-related challenges, the floods and the drought and all that. So they have the information. So it is upon us to work together to operate from the basis of correct data, correct information, and also most importantly, working with the communities. And I think we touched earlier on policies, and I would also further want to get your insights on how do we integrate, how do we ensure that we are able to scale up water innovations by integrating urban planning and the policies that are existing and also the building codes. So how do we integrate all this to ensure that we scale up water innovations?
That is a good question. Before I answer that one, I want to add on one point that you mentioned, because I like what you mentioned, that the data we also get from the community members themselves. That's actually exactly what we're doing. When we do a project, we do our own analysis using software to understand what are the risks, but at the same time we do field studies. So we are talking to the people and they're showing us, oh, last year the water came to here. So that collaboration is key. And if I'm really honest, more and more I'm relying on the data I'm getting, the information I'm getting from the communities than from the software. But that's my personal view. Coming back to the policies, I think it's an important point to address. Solutions have to be sustainable, and I don't think you can do without having things embedded in policies, in regulatory frameworks. That's why I think it's important to, have a direct line with policymakers, have them involved, make them aware of what we are, as a private sector, what we are doing. But I like also what you mentioned about the data integrity. I think me as a project developer, technology provider, we need to have accurate data of what we're doing, and it has to be reliable. I think only then the policymaker can make real serious decisions on how and what policies to implement. I mean, if it's the data we are providing is unreliable, then how are they going to make any policies? So I think it starts with data integrity. You need to have accurate data. We need to communicate well to the policymakers. And actually with we, I mean maybe even more so the community members. They are the ones who have to say, yes, this is what we're doing, it works. That's something we're doing now in Kenya as well. We did a project in Laikipia. It's actually the community members who are advocating for these technologies. So now in that county, they're looking into how can we embed this technology to make sure that we can scale up and that it's sustainable. And it's better that it comes from them than from me. So they're showing them, look, this is how we're using this technology. We're using it for tree planting. We're using it for flood prevention. And now the county governor, he's aware, and the municipalities, and they're saying, why don't we have this really embedded in our policies, in our regulatory framework? So I think the role of the community again here is key, rather than me as the technology provider or academia. I think we should be there as well, but it's the community members who should drive this as well.
Yeah, and also to add on this, we recently noticed another important thing in terms of communication for policy leaders. Many policy leaders are not really climate educated in some way. Because of course they come from different backgrounds, so no one's need to know everything. But these days, for a policy leader, climate is one of the priorities, if not the top one priority. So based on this, there's a recent work from University of Exeter that also we had some members from the university here at COP, and they launched this Parliamentaries Guide. So it's kind of a material to teach policy leaders and explain them how they can embed climate on their agenda. So from different perspectives, from municipalities, from states, from countries, how they can embed climate agenda on their official agenda. And they launched this, if I'm not wrong, a few weeks ago. And we had Stuart from the University of Exeter, who is doing this excellent job going to the conference and trying to speak with policy leaders to first to show them this material and then promoting some sessions with them to explain and share some ideas and how to use. So I think this can complement the whole need that we see these days in terms of we need solutions for mitigation, for resilience, for adaptation. But we really believe that education is also need for the policy leaders. So yeah, I think it's good to that we have many solutions working in complementary ways, and this one that I remember recently can fill this gap in terms of climate education for policy leaders.
Yeah, maybe to add one thing also in my country, the Netherlands, it's actually where academia and private sector are coming together. I mentioned we have the mobile flood barrier, so that's an example I have. And the mobile flood barrier is actually a more advanced system, more effective than sandbags. Still, the country is using sometimes sandbags for flood prevention. It's actually academia, the ones who are pushing now also the government, and also in the media, really, you know, we have some scathing articles against the government saying, hey, why are you still using that old technology? So there's a collaboration going on between private sector and academia to convince policymakers to make some changes. I think that collaboration is also very important if you want to move forward with policies and regulatory frameworks.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I believe if it is not officially written down, then it will not be planned for, and it will not be implemented. And what has come out very clearly is that the communities have the information, and they're willing also to share it. And they have very rich indigenous information. So how do we then integrate all these informations from the communities to water governance and to regulatory framework and all that? So how do we officially, because they could be having information, and you as a researcher, you can easily go get the information from them. And as a private sector, you can go and get the information from them. But how do we officiate that information and get it into the water governance framework?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to tell you about our experience in that regard. It's a challenging process. So let's say when we do a project and we've implemented our solutions, the community is happy, and then we try to convey this message also to the government, to the policymakers, whether it's regional, local, national. There's still some convincing to be done for them to take it into their policies. I have to admit, it's kind of a struggle. Even though we try to work together, I think maybe in our case we should involve academia a bit more. But community members, private sector, we are doing our best to effectuate these policy changes. Normally we start off on okay, let's say on local or regional level, rather than immediately national level. But we should build up towards national level. But I think in our case, the most important thing is to do as many projects as possible, collect as many data as possible with a high level of data integrity. I think only then, at a certain point, you come at a point that the policymakers, they cannot go around you anymore. You've done so many projects with this technology or whatever solution. There's so much data available. There's so much noise from the communities, from the academia, from the private sector. At a certain point, you need to force the government to change these policies. There has to come a point that they cannot go around you anymore. I think that should be the goal, because it is a challenge convincing them to make any policy changes.
Yeah, and I think that linking to COP, I think one way is for us to make sure and to pressure that water resilience management is included on the NDCs, for example, that every country sent to COP. Few days last week here at COP, I saw a movement from the Planetary Science Pavilion, where that is being directed by Professor Carlos Nobre from Brazil and for other professors, inviting the delegates to stop by the pavilion to understand planetary science. So I think this is kind of a stylist way to pressure them. Say here, science is here at Blue Zone. Come here. Instead, before to go to the negotiation, come here, stop by our pavilion. See, ask us questions. If you have something to ask, learn with the panels. So I think this kind of pressure is a good way to try to provoke some movement on this direction, and for us to maybe instigate governments to apply some subsidies for regenerative agriculture, may potentially ban constructions in areas with high risk of flood. You know, these kind of things that the governments can do, but sometimes they are being slow or they are not acting on this direction. So I think we should pressure in some way to convince the leaderships, and also there is a gradual process in terms of renewing the leaderships. We know that we have elections every 2, 3, 4 years in different countries. So I think this is part of our understanding in terms of what do we want for the future. So try to choose leaders that are more aligned to the climate agenda and embed this on their policy. I think we are already seeing this happens in some countries, and we will see even more in next years that people will choose leaderships in terms of climate agenda.
Okay, great. I totally agree with your sentiments completely. What I would add in terms of that is that from experience in my country, we have this process that is embedded even in the constitution that is known as public participation. I don't know if it's the same in other different countries, but every time there is a policy or there's a regulatory framework to be designed or developed, it has to go through public participation. However, that public participation is not really public participation. It's usually a formality. And I think moving forward, we need to take public participation and community involvement very seriously when we are coming with all these water governance frameworks. So that is my take. And I think we are almost going to the last part, which is the most important, and this is financing. So we have talked about water climate resilience. We have talked about involvement in the communities. We have talked about embedding in the policies. But all this cannot be implemented if we don't have financing. So it is part of the most important aspects that I would want to understand from you, maybe starting with you, Omar, from the private sector. How do you ensure that you're able to access financing, whether it's concessional loans, all these different, because there are different types of financing, and sometimes all those different types of financing can become complicated for even maybe the communities of this or the smaller organizations to understand. But what has been your experience in terms of financing access?
Yeah, I think that's the million-dollar question, no pun intended. I mean, that has been a challenge, I think, for since I started with this company, because we are focused on climate adaptation, not so much mitigation. So climate adaptation, you know, these projects are slightly opaque, not really bankable. That makes it a challenge, for sure. Especially when knowing that the communities that we try to help have the least amount of money. So we're trying to find different types of solutions to overcome that hurdle. One is we're participating in the ABM methodology, the Adaptation Benefits Mechanism, which is a mechanism developed by the African Development Bank. It's a way of kind of like carbon credits, but then for adaptation technologies. It's a new mechanism they are trying to develop or trying to launch, which will allow us to access funding from the market. Meaning that, like carbon credits, you can trade in certified adaptation benefits. I won't delve in it too deeply, but just as an idea, let's say you have mobile flood barriers, and we are able to protect with these mobile flood barriers a certain amount of damage. We are able to protect 50,000 euro dollar worth of damages, and one adaptation benefit is $1,000 loss avoided. So you have 50 adaptation benefits that are realized. Just to give you an idea of how the system would work, that is an opportunity to try and access funding for our solutions. Another way we are thinking of is to make our solutions more bankable. I mentioned in the beginning that we're trying to follow a holistic approach. That's something we're trying to do, because mobile flood barriers in general, they don't generate any revenue. But if we integrate it with other solutions, like maybe for storing water, irrigation systems, that will generate revenue, and then you can try and make the project bankable. So that's the second solution. Another solution is more working on PPPs, public-private partnerships. We're trying to access more funding from the private sector, foundations or any other type of organizations, and then have multiple financiers involved, share the risk, share the responsibility. Yeah, and I mean, hopefully it's going to take off a bit more, because I think scaling up is necessary, especially when it comes to water. It is a struggle, but we're taking any effort we can to access that funding to help communities worldwide.
From the academia perspective, I would say that we work a lot in terms of getting research funding. So we have, every country has your agents for research funding. I can mention UKRI in the UK. In Brazil, we have CNPq and CAPES. This kind of agents, they give to us in terms of the research project. So we do partnerships in academia and private sector, and that's good that private sector comes together, because this strengthens the proposals. Usually these agents are looking for cooperations between academia and private sector, and also with the government, of course. But I would say that the private sector specifically brings some agility. Makes the process more agile, so and more efficient in many times. So it's nice to have the private sector close and together with the proposals, and we work a lot on this kind of proposals. Recently, we submitted some proposals together with UNESCO, with Brazilian universities in Brazil, with ANCA, the African National Capital Alliance, also that we have partnerships there. So I think this kind of a relationship strengthens and expands the possibilities in terms of access funding from philanthropy, for example. If you have a robust project, a robust top to research, and also a robust team, when you compound a good team with different partners from different sectors, it makes the research proposal really strong, and so we can access more this kind of funding, and it will enable the research at the academia.
Great. Good insights there. But what I was thinking while you were talking about proposals and research projects and research grants, I was thinking to myself that the academia has potential to ensure that they don't finish at the research level, that they reach to also the implementation level, even not to a very, great extent, but at least some beginning. And I'll talk about a project that I have interacted with before, but I think they had a really good model. It's called Rich Water, and it was a research by Oxford University. So they did research on sustainability of water projects, because some of those community projects that we do don't end up being sustainable, and it's because we have not included the community. So you'll find that there are places, I think you've been in Kenya, so there are places like Laikipia where you have to dig boreholes, places like Kitui, which are dry areas that you have to dig boreholes. And you'll find that development partners come and, drill boreholes and then they leave. So when they leave and the communities are not able to operate and maintain, the communities are not able to, even try to resource mobilize for maintenance of that. So what that REACH program did is that after researching the sustainability of the project, they then implemented a model that was able to ensure sustainability of those community projects. So they included a private partner because they realized that the community can integrate a private partner who has knowledge and skills of operating and maintaining, and then they can be contributing a small amount of money, and the government is contributing small amount of money. And I think also this can be implemented in the flood control models that you have, in such a way that government is contributing so that the community contributes subsidized prices. And you'll find that community sometimes is willing to do that as long as they are able to, because you're providing them a service. You're providing them a service that had not existed. So this REACH program ensured that the projects that were implemented were operated and maintained by a private entity, and the company, the community and the government was paying this. And when the community is contributing, they also believe they are also part of that project, and they are also very keen on no vandalization and all those ideas. You get. So I think moving forward, and this is something you can try to see how the university can integrate it in such a way that we don't, because most of the research that is done by academia, sometimes it doesn't get out of the research. Not most of it is implemented. But if we move from this is the research that we've done, this is what the community can get away from, get from it, and through that, then we are able to, further increase water resilience. And when we're talking about financing, I believe it's a very complicated affair, and I wish that that complication can be gotten rid of, and that we are able to, I know funds are they're not easy to get and they're limited, but there is a way we can get away from the complication bit of it. The program Building Climate Resilient for Urban Poor, it was a program that was initiated in 2019 during the UN General Assembly, and it is co-implemented by two countries, Brazil. It's championed by two countries, Brazil and Kenya. And Kenya, we have made considerable progress, but not so much on financing. However, we have put all the governance frameworks in place. We have ensured that it is budgeted for by the government, because also development partners will want to see, is this part of the priority for the government? because they look for priorities and then they fund that. So we are ensuring that all the governance frameworks are there, the community is also involved and all that. And now we are starting now to resource mobilize, like you said, looking for proposals to draft and following up with GCF organizations such as GCF and all that. But we are trying to do that. I think we are almost close to the end because we have already touched on policies, on all those data, on community and all that. So right now, I would want us to give a parting shot from each one of us, and maybe we can start with you, Marcos. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we've addressed already quite a few subjects. Not easy topics, but to me it seems that collaboration is key. I know we talk about it quite a lot during the COP, also previous COPs. We try to make it concrete in our projects, like enforce this collaboration, have those people in the project organization, make sure they work together and they deliver, and we monitor. And the monitoring part, I think, is something even we as a company should work more on, collecting, having data integrity, making sure that we can prove our worth. That way we can convince policymakers, we can convince communities, hopefully also convince financiers, and then try to access funds more quickly. Because scaling up is needed. It's needed now, not tomorrow. We need it now. So, yeah, our focus is that. We should.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and from the academia perspective, I can finish saying that historically, universities and the whole academia sector was measured by papers, by number of citations, this kind of metrics. But I can see, especially next year right now, the name of this team where I'm working is the Nature and Climate Impact Team. So we are shifting towards a direction, impact-driven direction. What this means? Impact is abstract. It's hard to measure. There are different ways to measure, but this allows us to create and use different metrics. So when you said about the knowledge being produced inside of the university, stay within the university. This is true, and we are working to get this knowledge and share this outside of the university, and this is promoting impact. So this is deliver the solutions and deliver the building the capacity on local communities. And the university can do this because we have some more resource in terms of education. So beyond to build a solution, we have this possibility of creating this capacity for the community to be able to use some tool and some results of a project even after the project ends, at least the first funding ends. So yeah, I think we should think more in terms of impact and meaning, the meaning of the work we are doing, the solutions, and not only on the traditional metrics and papers and this kind of work that we are being shifted towards.
I think we are all in agreement that whether it's academia, whether it's the private sector, whether it's the government, whether it's the civil societies, we have one goal, which is the impact. And the impact is in terms of water climate resilience, because water is one of the sectors that are highly affected by climate change, either through too much water, which is floods, or too little water, which is droughts. All right. So we have one goal, and we can only work together if we have one goal that we are aiming towards. And I think we have had a very rich conversation here, ranging from data, ranging from policies and governance. And I want to believe that whatever we have spoken here, we are going to practice back to our institutions, and there will be collaboration moving forward, and that we will be able to influence even other stakeholders, to work together, to try resource mobilize together for one impact. Otherwise, it has been great to moderate this session and to also give my insights, and pleasure meeting you. Do we have any comments from the audience?
Thank you. I've learned quite a few things here, and my question is directed at the academic in the middle. So, in academia, you are told to either publish or perish, and that means that a lot of academics are caught up in this whirlwind of racking up publications, especially between as junior academics, postdocs, okay, and before making as we say, professorship, if I may use that word. So we have a culture where academics are encouraged to publish, but not for the right reasons. Ethically right, but impactfully, in quotes, wrong. And I say this cautiously because of what you said earlier about measuring impact and how to contextualize impact. What is impact? It can be debated. So now, I'm saying this from the development perspective now. If the goal is to work with communities, then I think we need to rethink how we do our research as academics, especially in Africa, within the African context. So we're looking at flooding, drought, and water management systems. So how do we then rethink and repurpose our research now to embrace impact? Because I'm calling us out as academics right now. Our research isn't really making much impact. She said it, that the bulk of research within academia they are rarely implemented. Why? Because academics write for themselves and they talk to themselves. You think about most academic conferences, right? We're either talking to junior colleagues or our colleagues or senior colleagues, right? They're usually hierarchy. So how do we make an impact? Because climate change is real. We cannot be talking at ourselves or spending tons and tons of dollars doing research that are left on cupboards. So how do we make real-time impact? Thank you.
Thank you for these questions. Yeah, this is the thing that we ask ourselves every day. And especially, this is working with this team at the Nature and Climate Impact team is being really changing experience in my career because we are really impact-driven group. We are not, let's say, a traditional research group. And the proof of this is that, for example, every project that we develop, usually we have a comms perspective around this. So earlier this year, in June, we launched a campaign in Brazil together with Globo, is the biggest media company, and Instituto IA is an ONG that works with climate agenda. First, we did a research in terms of what are the changes that all these climate changes are affecting cocoa, acai, and coffee in Brazil. So we know that the production is being shifted, squeezed the areas where we can produce these three crops. Then we went to some partners to build this comms campaign, and we launched this on Instagram, and it was live on TV channel with a comedian in Brazil, with some fun scripts, offering coffee on the street, and giving, instead of saying like, do you like a cup of coffee? And people say yes. But instead of giving a regular cup of coffee, he gives like a very tiny cup of coffee, saying, so with the same amount of money, now you can pay this amount of coffee. And this is because of climate change. So, and he did the same with acai and cocoa. So that's the thing, we in our projects, and I can speak for only for my team, but in our project, we always bring some components around the research projects. So this could be a paper and stays save it on some library. But we brought this to the channel, to the TV channel, the biggest one in America, in Brazil, and also to Instagram, to social media. Working with a comedian who has, like, if I'm not wrong, more than 7 million followers on Instagram. It's a Brazilian comedian, a well-known Brazilian comedian. So I think this is the kind of composing that we need to do. We do the science and we attach a comms perspective around. Sometimes it will be on social media, sometimes it can be an activation in some event or some conference or some city. Few years ago, Professor Gary Whiteman, the one who leads our team, went to the streets in New York with a famous Hollywood actor giving ice cream of vanilla, mango, some flavors that are endangered, giving ice cream to people and say, you know that this flavor is endangered. So everything has a research behind, but we try to go to the street every time, because maybe in one campaign the metric for impact will be the number of ice creams that they give and the messages. Another one will be the number of people that watch this on TV or that share it on social media. That's the good thing, that this impact-driven methodology allows us to change the metrics and use metrics that make sense for each project. But yeah, these are two examples of how we do this kind of translating climate science into something more engaging content.
Yeah, maybe I can also add that because I have little experience. Yeah, I have a little experience of research, and what I have done from my own perspective is that the research that I did, I am trying to share the findings in every way possible, including this time now. And I think what we can do now moving forward in terms of academia is ensuring impactful research, not just research. And I think when one is thinking about research, he or she should be thinking about how is this research going to impact the communities? How is this research going to impact people? Otherwise, I think I've been told time is up. We'll wrap it up there, and maybe we can socialize later. Thank you so much for listening.